Welcome. Today we're doing a deep dive into a really classic problem. It's one that modelers have wrestled with for, well, decades, really. You've sent us a great stack of sources on this persistent issue. Drive shaft ejection on the Tamiya Frog and, its whole family of ORV chassis cars.
Yeah, and it's fascinating because this isn't just like a simple broken part situation.
Yeah.
It's not even just a common failure.
Right.
It's really a systemic thing baked into the core engineering of that chassis right from the start back in 1983.
Wow, 83.
And what's really interesting is how it shows, multiple different design factors all kind of weaving together to create this one very frustrating problem.
That's a great way to put it. And it really sets us up for what we want to unpack here. We'll get into those fundamental flaws, the suspension geometry, the gearbox weakness, and maybe, most interestingly, how putting in premium upgrades, things you'd think would help, can actually sometimes make the underlying issues even worse.
Yeah, that's kind of counterintuitive.
Okay, so let's unpack this then. The primary culprit, the first thing you look at, is the rear suspension geometry itself.
Right, the trailing arms.
Exactly, the trailing arms. They pivot from the chassis, right? And that makes the wheel hub move in this really pronounced arc, which creates difficult changes in the distance the drive shaft needs to cover between the wheel and the gearbox.
Right, it needs that plunge.
Exactly, that plunge capability. The drive shaft needs to compress and extend, sort of like a telescope. But the problem is, the Frog's main pivot point isn't quite aligned correctly with the drive shaft's ideal path. So it tends to pull the shaft out, especially when the suspension is fully extended downwards, what we call maximum droop.
And wear makes it worse.
And wear in those plastic pivot points over time.
Oh, yeah. Definitely makes it worse.
Okay, but then what's fascinating is how the gearbox itself gets involved in this whole mess.
How so?
Well, you've got that two-part transmission housing, right? Held together with those relatively thin metal side plates. It just doesn't have much rigidity.
So under load, like when you accelerate hard or land a jump, the differential gears inside actually push the two halves of the housing apart.
Really? Pushes them apart.
Yeah, sources you sent describe it perfectly. The gearbox is canning itself apart under load, almost like the gears are trying to pry the case open from the inside.
Wow.
And this flex, this movement, it pushes drives the bits where the drive shafts actually plug in physically further apart.
Ah, I see. So that reduces the space?
Exactly. It reduces the available inward plunge distance for the drive shaft. So you've got the suspension pulling it out and the gearbox pushing the connection point further away.
Leading
straight to ejection. And that horrible clicking sound everybody dreads.
Right, the click of death. And this is where it gets really insightful. Looking at those upgrades, people try to fix this, right? They go for stronger parts.
Common upgrades?
Like the MIP Super Bowl differential, that's part number 162 or maybe those XTRA Speed G45 steel CVDs, constant velocity drive shafts, XS TA29121.
Good quality parts on their own.
Absolutely. Quality stuff. But here's the twist. They don't fix the root causes we just talked about, the geometry and the flex.
No, they don't.
And because they make the drivetrain stronger, they let you put more torque through it. And that extra torque, it just magnifies the gearbox flex and makes that drive shaft plunge issue even more critical.
Yeah, it just exposes the underlying flaws more dramatically.
It's like putting a bigger engine in a car that already has a bent frame, right?
Yeah.
You're just going to highlight the weakness.
That's a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
So this raises the big question then. If just throwing stronger parts at it isn't the answer, what is?
Good question.
Looking through the sources, there's a pretty clear hierarchy of fixes, and what we could probably call a gold standard solution emerges.
Okay, the gold standard. Let's talk about that. From what we've seen, this Tier 2 solution, it really has two key parts. It tackles both problems.
Right.
First, you swap out those CVDs, the constant velocity ones, for the Tamiya hop-up option, number 53908. These are the Assembly Universal shafts.
UJs, not CVDs.
Exactly, universal joints. They are purpose-built with much better plunge capability built right in. Unlike CVDs, UJs are just naturally better at handling more axial movement, that in and out motion, and they bind less at the kind of extreme angles the Frog suspension creates.
They're just the right engineering choice for this specific quirky setup.
Precisely. And then the second part.
The second part is tackling that gearbox flex head on. You need a dedicated gearbox brace.
Right, those plates.
Yeah, these are usually aftermarket parts, sometimes 3D printable now too. They basically just clamp the two gearbox halves together really firmly.
Adding that missing rigidity.
Totally. It provides that crucial structural support stops the halves from spreading apart, that prevents gear stripping, and it stops that flex that contributes to the drive shaft popping out. Simple, but really effective.
So while you could do simpler things, like that old O-ring mod sticking rubber rings in the drive cups to limit travel.
Yeah, that's just a temporary patch, really.
It's a Band-Aid.
Yeah.
And a full suspension redesign. Well, that changes the whole character of the frog, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It wouldn't really be a frog anymore.
So the Tamiya #53908 UJ shafts plus a solid gearbox brace seems like the sweet spot reliability without losing that classic feel.
That's the optimal balance, yeah.
So wrapping this up, what does this all mean for you and your Tamiya frog? Our deep dive really points to this specific two-pronged approach being the best path forward.
Get those Tamiya #53908 Assembly Universal shafts.
And pair them with a good, dedicated gearbox brace.
Yeah, because that combination, it directly tackles both root causes. The geometric issue pulling the shaft out and the gearbox flexing under load.
It's not just treating symptoms.
Exactly. It makes the drivetrain genuinely robust, maybe even bulletproof in the context of this specific chassis' weaknesses.
And that really transforms the experience, doesn't it? From, constant frustration and fixing things trackside.
Listening for that click.
Yeah, to actually having confidence in a durable, reliable buggy that you can just enjoy.
And maybe the most rewarding part, beyond just having a working car, is that journey, diagnosing these issues, understanding why they happen, and then systematically fixing them.
Right.
It turns you from just someone driving the car into, well, kind of like a technician or an engineer figuring it out. You learn that just making one part stronger doesn't always work if the underlying design has issues.
It just moves the weak point somewhere else.
Precisely. The real bulletproof fix always goes after the root cause.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty cool lesson to learn from working on a classic like the Frog.